Thursday morning. God bless you guys. We're going into from Christmas to New Year, the most important time. A lot of noise going on in the world of all the things that the world do. And sometimes some of those noises have great voices that speak toward us. You know, lack has a voice. You know, limitation has a voice. War has a voice. Many voices that are speaking. And every day your friends have a voice. Family members have voices. And you have to really tune into God by understanding the power of a voice and the loudest voice that you're listening to, as we've given you just a couple of examples this week, all through the Word. But you really have to register, because sometimes our family members are the loudest voice that we hear. Something goes on, they've been moved by something, offended by something, and then all of a sudden, guess what? Hear their voice go speaking stuff that don't even matter with the things of God, just flesh stuff, carnal stuff and whatever. And we can tend to take those voices, and the Lord is trying to speak to us and say things to us, which I'm going to talk tomorrow about. The still small voice, one of the ways that God speaks to us, one of the languages that He speaks to us through. But most of us listen to so many things every day, all over and over and over. Every newscaster, every whatever that's coming on through social media, all those loud voices. And then when it comes time for the Lord to speak to us, we miss out, because those things are speaking to us louder every day. Here's an illustration today, okay, of how to deal with those loud voices, because most of the time it is some form of spiritual warfare coming against you. You may not recognize it, because it can be so simple and so sweet. It can be dressed up. It can be in the face or the picture of someone that you've loved all your life, or thought they loved you all your life, or that you think you can trust. A lot of the enemy uses a lot of things, ways to speak to us, and so you have to be able to still understand the voice that you hear. You should be able to look in the face of a person who's smiling at you and understand and be able to discern whether that is a demonic voice speaking to you from inside that person. Even a person who's living nice this way or that way morally, there's still 13 evils in their heart. And those 13 evils can speak to you. We're not going there today, but I'm going to share with you a defensive mode until you get yourself to balance you out, okay? So that you might be able to check what's being spoken to you, so that you don't be shaped or molded into some other image in life. And then guess what? You become doing that same thing that they're doing, okay? All right? Please write this down. Here's a note from some of my notes, And like I say, man, it's good to have a virtuous woman, because we've learned some things. And then we talk about these things that we've learned. And we study these things by the notes of God, by the intervention of other men and women of God that have gone through some of the same things, know some things, and then by the leading of the Holy Spirit. Silence can be an act of war, okay, against the competing voices for your attention. Silence. This is why James says, through patience, you can inherit it. Through patience, guess what? I can cause things to become good for me, because I don't get anxious at the loud voices that are speaking to me, okay? And do something that's out of character, then it'll get me out of balance, okay? And then I've got to now try to balance myself back out. And while I'm trying to balance myself back out, the enemy is throwing more things at me to try to weigh me down, bringing more influence against me from someone else, or hearing something, because he knew by my, again, submitting to that voice, that now I have willfully taken him in. See, you have to watch how you submit yourself to people, okay? Going to places, I willingly submit myself to certain things, all right? Joining clubs, I willingly submit myself, because voices are being spoken in those clubs, those organizations and things, and I submit myself to those things. Then I can bring some tremendous demonic attack against my life, even my children, okay? Silence is an act of war against competing voices, okay? Now we're going to show you, here's a story of Elisha. Remember, this is a man who spoke the word. It didn't rain for 3.5 years. He's fed by ravens. Okay? They bring him food in the morning, food in the evening. Then he comes out and he meets the king and he goes up on Mount Carmel. He calls down fire from God. He's put this whole sacrifice there, and God comes down, licks up the water, licks up the stones, licks up the sacrifice, licks up everything. And then this guy goes out and he says, okay, now we got to get rid of these prophets of Baal. And they go down and they slay all these prophets. All right? He's called the father of reformation in Israel. He was the one that began to reform, caused them to come back to the way they were in the beginning. And then it says this in chapter 19. Okay? Remember, he's outrun horses. He'd like to have the spiritual power on you to outrun the king's horses. Not just any horses. The king had the best horses. All right? To outrun the king's horses. And then he comes in, he gets this letter, and it says, and Ahab told Jezebel all that Elijah had done. This is chapter 19. Come on, go with me now, because we're talking about voices. And of all how he had slain all the prophets with the sword. Then Jezebel sent a messenger to Elijah, saying, so let the gods do to me, and more also, if I make not thy life as the life of one of them by tomorrow about this time. A message. A message comes to him. It says, when he saw that, he arose and went for his life. And it says, this is when we get into him listening to the still small voice. You know, God wasn't in the fire. He wasn't in the earthquake. He wasn't in the wind and all that. We get that when we continue reading this. But a message sent to him after he done did all of this and seen this powerful presence of God open up the heavens, fire come down. You know, how far is heaven up that you're going to see that fire coming down? And all those people were there. They saw that fire come out of glory. They saw that fire come down. I mean, how many miles is it coming down out of glory? They saw that fire come down and licked up the fire, licked up the wood, licked up everything there and whatever. And they, you know, many of them fell down. They bowed, they whatever. Some committed back to the Lord, but these prophets didn't. And guess what they did? He went out and he killed them all. And guess what? Now a message comes to him. And he flees. Why? Because that voice spoke to him louder than the testimony of God's faithfulness just during the day. Just during the moments. Even when he was prayed for rain, the testimony of God faded. Because what she said was going to happen to him spoke louder to him, and it shaped him into fear. To the point that even when God told him what to do, he only did one or two things out of the last three things the Lord told him to do. Got to watch how voices are speaking to you and how loud they're speaking over the things of God. God bless you. We'll see you here tomorrow morning on Daily Bread.